we need to have a youth movement that's based on our indigenous knowledge, which was the mastery of our ecology and our cosmology. And now we don't even know that the light in the sky is called a sun, or that the sun does more and make you warm.
Nga, what is the point of this? The point is to actually show umntomnyama that spirituality and religion, modernity and science comes from the root astrology. All these systems, they can be traced back to the symbols and asterisms our ancestors placed in the sky. We can trace the alphabet as well to these asterisms. We can trace the numbering systems, but not just the stars. Actually, to be more correct, we are tracing them to the positions of the sun. Hence, I call this movement Abalandeli Belanga, because we are following the sun.
Westerners understand this very clearly. They've taken African sacred science and they now call it science. Yeah, the oldest book in the world that is known to the world to write about what we call theology is called the Pyramid Text. Let me just recite some of it. In the Pyramid Text, Amen, which means that which is hidden, but yet exists as power, says of itself, I create myself out of myself. I cause existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I realized that I existed, Ma'at, the feminine factor was at my side. Okay? And that brought harmony, truth, harmony, balance, and reciprocity into being. And then I spat out Shu, the feminine energy that makes up what we call the gases and the moisture and stuff in space. And then I called up Tefnut, the opposite, that makes the one that we call space.
And that which we have termed space umkati and isikati is a happening within eternity. It is a happening within eternity. It is a happening within the ether. Time and space happens within Itongo, within the omnipresence. In Him we live, move, and have our being. In Him we live, move, and have our being. Eternity, ipakade, the packet, pakati, umkati, pakati. It's the same word. All this, it is happening pakati. Pakati of what? The ether, itongo. Space and time are complex, highly complex mirages of motion within Itongo, the omnipresence. In fact, nothing exists outside Itongo. There is nothing outside of Itongo. Itongo, or ether, or dark matter is not space. No. Umkati, space, is an effect within Itongo. Dark matter is not space. Dark matter is not space. The ether is not space. No. Space is an effect, an eventuality within the sea of dark matter.
And they give birth to Nut, which is all of the planets and the elements, which is brought together by the gases and stuff and so forth that the God has created. And then Nut marries Geb, who's the earth. And then Geb and Nuth, those elements that make up the sky and the gases and so forth, and Geb, those elements that make up the earth. So you got cosmology now, ecology. They come together according to our ancestors, and they created a Sar and a Set, man and woman. They take that story and make our Aset Eve and our Asar Adam. But as he goes through the creation story, this is the African version that the European version comes out of. I created everything that my heart desired. And having done so, I, Amen, expanded in all of it. Meaning everything that exists as an aspect of the divine. At the end of the dissertation of the pyramid text, Amen has now become Ra. He brings forth Ptah. Ptah is a mountain, a symbol of a mountain, but it represents solid matter. And then he brings forth Ra, the sun, which represents energy, matter. And then he looks back at the source. He says, but I, the God of God that created everything and expanded everything, I came from my mother, Nun, which is liquid matter, which is called the primordial word of Nun. That's liquid matter. So that whole book is a discussion on quantum physics.
Yeah. You see how worn out it is? So in the creation account, Baba Mutwa tells us that within this sea, or with the primordial waters of no thing, an action emerges, a desire emerges, and the river time ends up desiring or craving the primordial waters of the no thing. And now, out of this mating, a living spark is created. Now, when this living spark is created, in the accounts of Kemet, if you read how Asar comes to be, this living spark, or this let there be light moment, that is where we are. When the spark comes out and he says, I self-created myself, because within the imperceptible waters of Nu, we don't know what is happening. He self-creates, because the division that happens within the divisibility, no one can tell you about. All you know that though is that if you friction that indivisible space, if you friction it in a certain way, if you condition it in a certain way, the living spark discharges out of it. And now this living spark, it looks around and it says, I self-created. I came out from the Big Ben, or I alone did it. And now, in this version of the account, the little spark realizes that either I grow or I die. And then it begins to, here it is again, to eat or devour the no thing, until eventually it devoured everything and it became this omniscient presence now that says, I am. And I am. And every time it does this, there is a disturbance, a formation of matter. And how is this matter forming? It's coming to be in spheres. Then Ubaba goes on to say that when the river time realizes that what the living spark had done, to punish it, it sends the spirit of cold. This is now the primordial waters. They've come now in a different form. They are now the spirit of cold. And Ubaba tells us that the war between the spirit of cold, compression, and the spirit of heat, the living spark, expansion, it is from these ashes now that everything, the stars, everything, all the orbs that we are witnessing around us